This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 19th, 2016. The Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tap into Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook and Long Hill and Warren. Roll call, please, Mr. Sines.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Mizio? Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mrs. Fector?
Here.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Martins?
Here.
Mr. Massabatista?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Here. Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session for the purpose of discussing student and personnel matters, after which action may be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
We're going to get started and going a little bit out of agenda since we did finish executive session early. We're going to move to item E first, which of course is probably the most important item we're going to talk about today, nonetheless. So this is a resolution for Mr. Peter Fallon.
Borrow this. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure of reading the resolution. And before I read the resolution, and I know I'm sure the other board members will say something as well, but Peter, I really truly want to thank you for your service to the board. You've been extremely supportive to the district, to the students of the district, and to me as a new, when I came into the district, you started on the board shortly thereafter, and you've always been very supportive of my own personal professional growth, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. So now I would like to read the resolution. This proclamation regarding Mr. Peter Fallon shall be read at the public meeting of the Watchung Hills Regional High School Board of Education on December 16th, 2016. Whereas Mr. Peter Fallon has served the Watchung Hills Regional High School District as an outstanding board member for 9 years, serving with distinction as board vice president from 2007 to 2010. And whereas he has served on many committees during his tenure, sharing his expertise and insights in the areas of finance, policy, operations, and negotiations. And whereas he has continuously supported the hiring of outstanding administrators, teachers, guidance counselors, and support staff, enabling Watchung Hills Regional High School to become a school of excellence. And whereas he has worked tirelessly for our students with his every decision oriented toward giving students the best possible education, athletic, and co-curricular experiences. And whereas he played a key role in passing the 2016 referendum by disseminating information to our constituents to help ensure that all voters shared an understanding of the components of the referendum. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Watchung Hills Regional High School Board of Education thanks Peter Fallon for his many years of devoted service to our school district and wish him the very best and continued success in his future endeavors. And I'm going to resolution, Peter, for you, that I will present to you, so you can forever remember us wherever you choose to put us.
You can get to name like a sub sandwich or something. So.
Open the floor to any personal comments.
I have something here. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget.
Hey, cross it off. Takes a lawyer to know a lawyer.
I have served 15 years on various boards and have served most of the last 6 years on this board with Pete Fallon. Pete exemplifies the type of board member who is invaluable to an organization, and I would like to offer my impressions of Pete. Pete has worked hard to advance the vision that the board and administration have for this outstanding high school. These are some examples of Pete's efforts. Pete serves on various board committees, volunteering for ad hoc committees as the need arises. He served on the Strategic Planning Committee concerned with post-secondary planning. Pete regularly attends county school board meetings and brings valuable information back to this board. He serves on the New Jersey School Board Association Legislative Committee and was a past member of that body's Finance Committee. Pete makes himself available to assist fellow board members through the discussion of ideas and possible solutions to any conundrum facing the board, and by conveying his knowledge of issues related to this board's work. Pete not only served on this board, but was a member of the Warren Board of Education for many years. That service has made Pete a valuable resource. He is knowledgeable about many aspects of board duties, including negotiations and policy, and the myriad state regulations applicable to board operations. Pete's performance on our operations committee is most impressive to me. He is familiar with all aspects of our physical plant and capital projects, past and present. He has often made difficult decisions with the other members of that committee. Then it was up to Pete, as chair of that committee, to convince the rest of the board that the committee's decision was the best course of action. Pete is respectful to everyone. Pete has a positive outlook, which always impresses me because I know that Pete has overcome many difficulties. Pete's departure from this board is a loss to the high school community. He is to me not only an appreciated member of this board, but Pete is also my friend, and I will miss serving with him.
Thank you, Lisa.
That has to get framed now.
I recorded it, Seth. Nobody's going to believe it's about me.
May I say just 2 words? There's nothing that's left to be said about what you've done, but I'll just personally say, Peter, we've been on this together for many, many years. I've always respected what you've had to say. I've enjoyed your smile and your twinkle particularly on a very personal level. And I certainly shall miss you, but you just promised me a cup of coffee together, so I'm
More than that,
ahead.
Peter, I just want to say, I've enjoyed working with you on the board all these years, and I think we share temperament that we're never shy when we have an opinion, but if we can move on, we'll move on. So you'll be sorely missed, and your shoes in the operations committee will be very hard to fill.
First, Peter, I just want to say that I've known you in varying capacities, and I didn't write this down, so you can't frame it. First of all, as a constituent, when I reached out to you with ideas or concerns, you were always there, always available to any constituent at any time, and I saw that firsthand as one of your constituents. One of the reasons why I ultimately decided to run for board was because of the model that you shaped for our community, and you became a role model for me to want to run for the board. You've been a role model for me and a mentor as I've come onto this board, always providing me guidance, both positive and sometimes a smack in the head when that was necessary as well. And in seeing how this board functions and other boards functions, you are a model board member. You always do the work, you come in prepared, you ask the hard questions, but you do so in a very humble and generous way. And I'm going to miss you tremendously because you've done such a great job serving our community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you've shared with me personally and all that you've shared with our community. So thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, Bob.
I have something to say. So, I've had many
As long as
discussions.
it's not about the field.
Now you mention it, we've had many discussions on certain operational aspects of this district. I know you've always had the district's best interest at heart and, the least cost but most effective way to do things. Now, we haven't always agreed, as you know, but you're always willing to listen, and you're always willing to try to get to the better solutions. So I really do appreciate that.
Thank you, Barry.
I was going to wait till everyone's...
Peter, there's not much more I can add that hasn't been said in great capacity. I just wanted to thank you. When you come onto a board, and I'm still the newest member of this board 2 years later, there's a tremendous learning curve, and you've been a phenomenal mentor, and you've taught me in a very easy way, and I appreciate that. And everybody's replaceable, but you will be sorely missed on this board. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
So I'd like to share some personal insight with everyone on the board and to be thankful to Peter for his mentorship. I think we underestimate how much we can learn from one another, and I feel like I'm filling, or following at least in the footsteps, hopefully filling your shoes, following you in the K-8 board and then following you here. There was a time where it was suggested that I run for this board, and actually Peter was also running for that seat, and we had spoken about whether we should be competing against one another or whether an opportunity might be given, and you were very, very gracious in that conversation and suggested that I go ahead, and you stepped back to allow me that opportunity, for which I'm always going to be grateful. And I think that that is just one example of many in which Peter has provided us with his wealth of experience and stepping back when need to be, and being at the forefront, trying to guide us to make the best decision that will be not just fiscally responsible, but in the best mindfulness of our student population and what benefits them. So for all that you've done for many years, and I hope that this is just a one-year break for you so that we can see you back once again. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, Greg. I'll just say briefly, Sandy, Barry, Lisa, Bob, Greg, Glenn, Chris, Bruce, and Pete, who's not here, as well as Liz and Tim and Beth. I've appreciated serving as a board member with all of you. When I first came on this board 9 years ago, or 10 years ago now, there were some difficulties with things were split, and we had some very difficult and contentious meetings. I'm proud of the way that this board works together, even when we express all our own particular viewpoints. Not that we always agree, but we find a way to work together. I'm proud of the fact that I think every member of this board does have the best interests of the school at heart. I'm proud of the fact that during my service on the board, I think the stature of our school has been raised, and I think we give an excellent education to our students. It's because of the dedicated efforts of all of you. I've enjoyed working with all of you and sharing my insights, because I truly think that does help make a better board when people know how to work together. And so to hear that you've appreciated that means an awful lot to me. And, I think we've got an outstanding top team of administrators running the school. Liz, Tim, Beth, I think you're doing an incredible job, and, it'll be nice to watch you continue to make this school grow. Thank you all.
Thank you, Peter. So shall we take a few minutes to cut some cake and celebrate your years of service? Thank you.
His 1 year sabbatical.
Move back onto our scheduled agenda. We have no board correspondence, correct? So we'll go with Ms. Jewett for your comments.
Okay, my comments are very brief. I'm going to leave most of our report to our students, who have quite a lot of accolades to talk about for our students. But there were two that I wanted to highlight. The New York Jets and Stomp Out Bullying announced last week that one of our seniors, Greg Shanahan, was named last week's Jets Upstander of the Week. This is something new that the Jets are doing for 2016. They're leading a new school initiative called Jets Upstander of the Week, and for each of the 16 weeks during the season, they'll ask schools to submit a photo and description of a student that is an upstander. So Greg's cross-country coach, Miss Eucness, submitted Greg, emphasizing what a positive role model he is for his cross-country teammates. And we do have the headline on the website with a link to the article. So it's really nice for him. And I think it's nice, too, because we've done so much work here on the whole upstander concept, helping to get the word in the dictionary, so it's nice that one of our students was recognized. I also wanted to point out that junior Alexis Teakin was picked by the Courier News as Gymnast of the Year. And in the article, it talked about how she was picked for her perseverance and remarkable season. She fractured her back and broke her ankle, both within a 2-year time span. And she came back this season to lead the team to its first Skyline Conference title in program history. So that's pretty impressive. So just, both of those students were in the news last week in the papers, and they are both linked on our website if you want to read more about it. So, and I also encourage everyone to attend our concerts this week. Tomorrow night is our instrumental music concert at 7 p.m. in the PAC. And Friday evening is our choral concert at 7 p.m. in the PAC, and the choir will also, will actually be starting off in Gym 5-6 because they're going to be singing at the beginning of the basketball game for Juan Carlos Cruz night. So it'll be a very active, busy week ahead. And we will be here. That's all I have, thank you.
Assuming that there's not another water main break. For my comments, it would be hard not to have missed the multiple articles that you've seen in the Star Ledger over the past about 9 days on the Field Turf Company, the Montreal-based company that has supplied playing fields throughout New Jersey, schools as well as throughout the country. Started with the special investigative section in the Sunday Star Ledger, I think on December 4th. And so there may be a lot of questions that folks in the public have about that. I think that our operations committee did an upstanding job in reviewing our options for our particular field and did their due diligence in making the recommendation, which the board approved unanimously. To be clear, the issue with field turf has been a specific product that was sold between 2005 and 2012, which actually doesn't even apply to the field that was put in. The DuraSpine product was something that has since been discontinued in 2012. So it's really not completely germane to our issue in terms of the field that has been installed. There was an interesting editorial in the Star Ledger this past Sunday from the CEO of Field Turf, and Field Turf is a Montreal-based company that's actually owned by Tarkett, which is a French-based company. And so they do have quite a deep infrastructure. Tarkett is responsible for a lot of flooring products, not just fields, but wood flooring and other types of things. And they are, I think from the best that I could glean from what has been published, are standing behind their products, have been addressing issues in terms of warranties for the DuraSpine product that had failed. There were different allegations, and our senators in this state have decided to seek hearings about really more of their advertising and how they portrayed the product, and time will tell how that plays out. But nonetheless, we've had our attorneys looking into our agreement as well as our warranty, and it appears that our decision was on a sound basis and that we remain protected for the product that we have, which again is very different than the product that has been a part of the expose in the newspaper. There are a lot of those fields that were placed in New Jersey, and in our administrators speaking with different schools who have placed even the DuraSpine field, that has not generally been a problem for many school districts, and it may be as investigations play out that what the CEO suggested is correct, and that is excess UV exposure and perhaps inadequate maintenance resulted in fields that failed perhaps earlier than what was expected. So I encourage everyone to read about this and maintain an open mind as investigations play out, but I think that these are really not applicable to our particular situation. And then finally, on behalf of the board, I want to wish the students, parents, teachers, administrators, and the Warren, Watchung, Greenbrook, and Long Hill communities a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and a wonderful holiday spent with your family as we approach our holiday break. I think it's Mr. Stye's turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just echo your words. I wish the board, the public, and anybody in attendance today the happiest of holidays. Enjoy the season. I hope it goes wonderfully for everybody.
Thank you. Now, our student representatives, and we have to give them an acknowledgement that they were given the opportunity, since they did not have school today, to take a bye for this session, but both decided to come nonetheless. So Ms. Przybylski, Ms. Blitzer, your comments.
And as Ms. Jewett said, we actually have a lot to talk about, so four marching band students, Peter Bosco, Ryan Branco, Jack Horn, and Carl Peterson, auditioned and were accepted to the Macy's Great American Marching Band. Ryan Branco, Jack Horn, and Carl Peterson also were invited to appear on the Today Show, which aired on November 21st. Allison Horvath and Veronica Mew were selected for the All-Eastern Choir, an extremely competitive program. The choir features students from the entire East Coast. Ashel Javieri won Best Speaker Award at the JSA Fall State Conference for his participation in a debate regarding whether or not the United States should adopt English as its official language. From December 1st to the 4th, the Watchung Hills Model UN participated in the Rutgers Model UN Conference. This conference included approximately 1,100 student delegates from high schools around the globe who came together to simulate the actions of the UN. After hours of research and debates, the following 7 of our 23 delegates were recognized for their outstanding efforts. Suchir Govindarajan and Amay Mehta, they won Outstanding Delegates in World Health Organization Committee. Karthik Irakam won Best Position Paper in Summit on Cybersecurity Committee. Brooke Stanicki and Kitty Travato won Best Position Paper in the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Committee. And Jeremy Q and Vamsi Desu won Best Position Paper in UN Human Rights Council Committee. 8 of our math students, Kevin Huang, Kevin Sun, Olivia Zhu, Sherlyn Zhu, Vamsi Desu, Joshua Schmidt, Helen Yang, and Vivian Zhang participated in the Joseph Andrushki Mathematics Competition on November 19th at Seton Hall University. As a team, they came in 3rd place overall. Sherlyn Zhu's individual score was the fourth highest out of the 249 students who participated in this competition. Calvin Kitty Wu and Jagdeep Baheti, teammates, have been named winners of the National STEM Video Game Challenge and were among 24 middle school and high school winners recognized at an award ceremony held at National Geographic in Washington, D.C. on November 14th. With top original video games and game design concepts selected in 18 categories for nearly 3,000 entries. They designed a video game with an apocalyptic setting, which told a story of a survival in the wake of a nuclear fallout. Several of our clubs have been involved in service activities during the holiday season. Members of the Action Against Hunger Club sponsored a school-wide Thanksgiving food drive for community members of Morris and Somerset communities. Thousands of donations were collected and distributed between 3 locations: Market Street Mission in Morristown, Somerset County Food Bank, and St. Vincent de Paul RC Church. They also planned and made sandwiches in the North Cap and delivery of food drive collections to Market Street Missions in Morristown. Members of the men's lacrosse team made a generous donation of food toward the food pantry at St. Vincent de Paul Church for Thanksgiving. The food pantry serves about 60 families a month, and the donation from the men's lacrosse team was greatly appreciated. Believe Club students created handmade cards with markers and construction paper for the children at the Children's Specialized Hospital. The Red Cross Club had our after-school holiday cards for Heroes Drive, where we made cards for our veterans, which will be sent out to all the VA hospitals and veterans across the country. Our environmental club is continually looking at ways to reduce the carbon footprint in our school, recently discussing and researching options for the trash recycling bins in the cafeteria. The club also held the environmental movie night and set up an informational board at the event. And the All School Council is hosting our annual Turkey Tray this Thursday.
And for an athletic update, the fall season successfully ended with girls soccer reigning as the 2016 Skyline Conference and County champions. Our gymnastics team also holds the 2016 Skyline Conference Championship title. We will be recognizing these teams and a number of our fall athletes for their accomplishments at our second January board meeting. We are very proud of all of our student athletes and coaches for their show of exemplary sportsmanship, skill, and efforts this season. We would like to thank and recognize the buildings and grounds staff for their daily hard work to ensure our fields and facilities were safe and ready for our teams, visitors, and spectators. We would also like to show our appreciation to the entire school community for their support at our athletic events. The winter season is just starting. Our ice hockey team started off with 2 wins. Our bowling and swim teams have also kicked off their seasons with our basketball, fencing, wrestling, and track teams getting ready for their first competitions. Opening night for boys basketball is this Friday, December 16th, which is also Juan Carlos Cruz night.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for them? Ladies, you are permitted to leave if you wish. We'll move on to committee reports, and we'll start with education.
The Education Committee met on December 9th. Mr. DeLucio introduced the concept of makerspace, which is a do-it-yourself space where people can gather to create, invent, and learn. It's a place where students can exchange ideas, build and lead projects for others to add on to, and it's something that we discussed about having here at the school in our library. It's still in the beginning, in the planning stages. The administration will be looking at other programs to see what might fit here. Rutgers has one that the administration will be visiting. So if we discuss doing it in the library and what the space might look like, should it be a number of different spaces or one large space? So this is something that we'll discuss further going forward. We'll wait for the administration to come back with the report, and then it'll be introduced again to the board with more detail. The scheduling for next year has already begun. Scheduling will now be electronic, except for freshmen. The supervisors are updating the program of studies, and the Academic Council has been reviewing new courses to add to the program of studies for next year. We discussed world language articulation. A group of teachers will be from middle and high school be traveling to West Windsor to see what their program, and the superintendent from Long Hill will also be attending. He has a lot of experience in world languages. And the idea is to bring all teachers together to have discussions, and hopefully going forward that these discussions will continue and will improve the world language programs in the middle schools and at the high school. And we discussed Room 108 and the food services program. By the second semester, the room should be ready to be operational. We did discuss the idea of shifting the program to a hospitality program. And the benefit of that is that the certification that would be needed would be a CTE certification. It's like an alternative route certification, so people from the industry can come in and get certified to teach. So hopefully we'd have a larger pool of instructors to draw from. And the curriculum would need to be rewritten. And the benefit is now that we're working on that room, we could work with the architect to transition that room to suit a hospitality program. And we discussed bundling 3 courses to be a part of this program, which we didn't just as an idea. We talked about baking and maybe how to open a cafe and similar ideas. And we discussed the field trip transportation costs. And I sent an email out to everyone requesting that they take a look at the proposed regulations. And basically what they do is state what trips the board will pay for transportation. And basically what it states is that the board will not cover the cost of class trips. that we will cover the costs of co-curricular trips, but now these clubs will be academic, non-athletic clubs, and they must meet the following criteria. They must be competition-based. The advisor must receive a stipend. It must be within the state of New Jersey, and there must be at least 20 participants to use the district bus. And we also discussed whether this would be a policy or a regulation. And the administration would like this to go into effect in January, but there may be some clubs that we would cover that we've already committed to for the balance, for the rest of the school year that we would pay for, that next year we would not be paying for. So I'd like to discuss this regulation, and I'd like to, if anybody has any comments or questions.
Lisa, one question, and I read what was posted, and I'm in favor of all of it. The question I have is, it's an academic situation, but where does ultimate frisbee fall into that? Because they're kind of in limbo. They're not an athletic, but they are athletic, but they're considered co-curricular. And if they advance to a competition,
We had
do
talked
we
about
cover
that that came up in our meeting, because we talked about that during one season, they are considered a varsity sport during the competition season, the other season is a club. So that's that, and again, this is our first crack at it, so that's how we thought we would handle that, is that during the season where they're in official competition, we would treat it as an athletic sport where we pay for it, where during the club season, it would be different.
I think they're on Schedule E for both seasons, though, in the contract.
A lot of the clubs are.
Okay.
Yes, meaning with the athletics and yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So they are stipended for both, but for the clubs, like some of them, even if they're stipended, we wouldn't pay for them, but when it's competition, we would. That's a good question. And there are going to be other, like, as you think of those types of questions, we tried to think of all the scenarios we could. Please, if you don't think of them now, forward them to us.
I just want to state that the administration wanted to be specific as possible, but there will always be exceptions, and that's a problem. As you just pointed out, one, there are others.
Yes.
So we just have to see going forward, but I think, as you say, it's a good idea to have something in place and to see how it all works out.
the only other thing that confused me was the term field trip, because some of these clubs are going to compete, which I feel we should support any club that's competing, but it's not really a field trip.
Yeah, that's why you can call it what you want. The administration, they drafted this, they presented it. If you have suggestions, it doesn't have to be called field trip, there's no reason it is called field trip. If you have another idea, that's fine also.
I think because it's aligned with our policy, and that's where it's called, as opposed to, in terms of the code and the policy, I think that's where that comes from, because they also classify things as, there's specific policy for class trips. What that actually refers to is not an individual class, but as in a social studies class, but a class trip as in the senior class trip.
Yeah.
So it really comes from the policy language.
But it is confusing.
But
That's why it's confusing also.
We're definitely open to feedback and suggestions.
And Pete, you could ask me as many questions as you want today, since it's the last time.
I just had a question concerning the 20 people.
Yeah.
And to the extent that we have, do we still have minibuses that we?
The smallest we have is
24.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe 20 is a financial consideration, but for a smaller bus that you're going to be that close to filling up, I don't know that, I'd necessarily say 20 is the cutoff, and maybe it's smaller when we can use a smaller
I think it
bus.
has to be more fluid, too, if you have 18 or 17.
That was.
We do, and
Yeah, I agree, this is what this is about,
Yeah.
for discussion, for comments, because we all question that also, the 20. It should maybe,
that's one of the most difficult parts of trying to put something in black and white
policy,
language,
yeah.
because if it's close enough to 20, what we had talked about is, we also have a committee that's talking about sustainability, and so we're trying to be somewhat efficient and aware of the resources we're using, so that we're not running a 25-passenger bus for 3 students. However, if we say it's for 20, let's say 2 students get sick and there's 18, we're not going to say, no, we're not going to run the bus. And so we actually tossed around some different numbers, and we threw out 20 as, okay, because if it's a couple less than 20, that's still okay. If we make it 15, and then it's 12 or 13, are we getting too low? So maybe we put a range But I think, but that's, Peter, that's another issue that we talked about is, what is the right number?
But I like the idea of a range.
Yeah. Didn't we discuss keeping it as more of a guideline than a hard policy?
Right, I was just going to say that I think the committee agreed that it would be a regulation to go along with the policy that we already have.
So it can be changed.
Exactly, yes.
Right.
Any other questions? No?
I mean, a comment, I think keeping it as a guideline is appropriate, leaving it at the discretion of the educators and administrators to see if it needs to be moved one way or another for a specific circumstance, and that way it doesn't necessarily have to be a range, it's a guideline.
Well, but it has to be, I think, more solid because people are depending on it, and I don't think you have that much discretion. I think a range, you don't want that much discretion because
Well, you get
then
some
it seems to...
flexibility with the range, though.
Right, but you're suggesting that they would have more discretion than...
Well, we can also keep the caveat, we did put that caveat in there for this year
Right.
specifically that,
Right.
Special consideration will be made for special circumstances. Honestly, I think that will probably continue beyond June of this year
Yeah,
because there's always
yeah.
going to be exceptions.
And one thing about a regulation, the administration does not have to show a regulation to the board. They can just enact a regulation without consulting the board. But I assume that we would continue with the current practice that the administration does show us the regulation or any changes in regulation. So if this is a regulation, if there are any changes, I expect that the board would see them anyway to discuss them. So.
Especially for something like this where the board is approving, the regulation tracks things that the board's approving on the agenda. So,
Right, exactly.
Just two quick comments. One is, as I understand it, this was designed to help solve what was clearly some ambiguity on, who would we pay for transportation for and who wouldn't. And there really, at times, did not seem to be some rhyme or reason. So this is an attempt to provide some clarity and order. And certainly, like anything that you do the first time, there's going to be some learning to go along with it. So it may be useful to track, those items that we do approve and those items that we don't approve, so we can go back and take a look at it to see, okay, where were those anomalies in this that maybe we need to make some adjustments for at the end of the school year. So if that would be helpful, I think that's something that would be pretty easy to do.
So to that point, the 4 students that just competed or performed in the Thanksgiving Day Parade, did we provide, where do they fall? And did we provide travel expenses for them?
We did. It's out of state. But it's out of state.
Yeah. Well, for those types of things, we don't generally provide
Transportation.
the funding for that, and especially if it's out of state, we don't.
But if that event were in New Jersey, just
There was
for
4
argument.
So I think if we playing it against this particular policy, there were 4 students as opposed to, what we've been talking about,
If our entire
15,
band
18, 20. So in that instance, it's easier for them to carpool or, find their own way instead of us running a 24-person bus to take them up there, is my understanding.
One of the, just so you know too, how we came up with the guidelines, we looked at what we have paid for, what we haven't paid for, because we wanted to see what this would impact. Is all of a sudden we displacing all sorts of clubs that we funded before, and that's not the case, because with a lot of these types of events, and especially the ones that happen on the weekends with small groups of students, their parents usually take them, they find their own rides, so we realized that this wasn't going to impact in terms of the number. There was a few clubs that it would, which is why we had said for this year we'll make some exceptions. But for the most part, the historical data of that is that they found their own transportation to those types of things. So we did try and lay out as well as we could what we have paid for, what we haven't, how many students there were, where the trips went to, so that we could see, who, if we were, and there are a couple that we will now be paying for that we didn't in the past, and there are some that we won't be paying for that we have in the past, but it's not a lot on either end.
Where do things like Math League, Science League fit into this?
And again, that depends on the number of students participating. So, and that's why there's a couple of our academic teams that are very small, that will likely fall into us not pay, if it's 8 students that will fall into not paying for a bus. But if they meet the number of kids, then yes, we would.
But have we not paid for wrestlers to go to Atlantic City?
This is not related to.
Athletics is totally separate.
And I understand that, but we're debating the number of students where the school is covering transportation. I don't think it should be athletics versus co-curricular. If we have 2 kids that are accomplished going to compete in a math competition, how is that any different than a wrestling match? I know they're different budgets.
That is a completely different, we intentionally during this conversation said we weren't discussing athletics because that is a completely separate set of policies and guidelines and budget. And the board has never really brought up starting to talk about, well, we're not going to pay for this team to go, or that's something, if that's a practice that the board wants to start talking about, we can, but this was specifically for co-curricular.
Well, I think Glenn's making a different point. And at that point, as I understand it, is that we have just a handful of students going to a physics league or a science league. Do we want to be making a decision that we've done it in the past, but we're not going to transport them in the future? And I don't have the answer.
Yes, I think this is the question we have.
I came with so many exceptions at the meeting, and I would just pay for everybody. I don't, look at the class trips, I don't get it. You have to
a cup of coffee for Tim.
I think that's where your special circumstances, whatever budget we're talking about, an accomplished student is an accomplished student. If they're going to compete on behalf of the school, that should be a special circumstance that we take under consideration. So while I agree there should be a limit on the buses and all that, I think if we have an accomplished student, we should take that under consideration if we should supply some kind of stipend in whatever competition they're doing. That's just my opinion.
I have a question. Could we somehow borrow or whatever the smaller, like the vans that the smaller districts use, instead of a 25-user bus, 5, 6, 7 passenger bus?
You're asking a lot on that one, Barry. We have one 24 passenger, and the rest of them are 54s, just to make that clear distinction.
Tim, I think the question is, it's really the driver is the cost, not the vehicle per se.
The driver is the cost, but we don't have buses always available, too. That's another issue, because we have big teams that are out using those buses. So that's always an issue, but borrowing from another school is always tough. We've done it in the past. You can tap into that one every once in a while, but you can't make a habit of it.
Right.
They got the smaller buses, like Warren K-8, but they're always going to tell you, no, we got this going out, this going out, this going out. So it's not as simple as you think, and you'd have to know well in advance and ask them. God forbid nothing came up. It's not that simple, believe me.
Okay.
It's time for Uber.
Are you volunteering, Sandy?
To Glenn's point, was it discussed to have a budget for exceptions? So the idea of a smaller group, perhaps there's a fixed budget annually that once the money runs out, but there's opportunity for smaller groups to have funding. That would be a way to have really control over the cost of it and not disenfranchise a group just because of size.
I think Bob's suggestion to track the trips using this type of format, and obviously we're going to be more lenient, at least for the next 6 months.
Then we can really see.
Then we can really have a good idea of exactly what we're spending, and then kind of do exactly as you suggest. Have that budget, and then, contingency type budget, and there you go.
Glenn, do you have any comments on that? You have some good ideas. What do you think about doing that now going forward?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think we should have some kind of a contingency budget for accomplished students. And should we be recognizing them when they're going somewhere, and I get the out-of-state person?
I agree. We'll track it for 6 months going forward, and then see what
it's a good
happens
idea.
going forward. Okay.
One thing I want to say is I appreciate how supportive the board is of the co-curricular activities and the trips and the competition. So I think it's great that we're having this discussion, and I appreciate the fact that you would like to find the money to fund what we can. which, is certainly our intent behind this, is not to discourage students from excelling and competing in anything, but just figuring out how we can manage it better than we currently are. So the feedback is really helpful, since this is really the first time we've tried to put this in writing. So, so Lisa, you did a very nice job of explaining it, and I really, we really appreciate the feedback and the comments, because it's very helpful.
Can I just make a couple of comments? I realized I went through the agenda pretty quickly, and I just want to point out, I think I mentioned two things that I find very exciting: the change to a hospitality program and the makerspace. And I don't know if everybody wants to talk about that, but the fact that, well, we're changing our foods program to a hospitality program, that hopefully will have more instructors and keep this program going forward, and reworking the curriculum and the space. I just think that, and to teach these kids some skills they could take out into the world and the food services industry, I just think that's very exciting. And makerspace, just as a place for kids to go and to work on all types of projects, not just science and math, but it could be crafts and art, just a lot of different things. And I just really look forward to have the administration come back to us and to hear their ideas and to see how we're going to set that up.
Lisa, was there discussion on how that room would be retrofit for, what would they do hospitality-wise?
Well, I know we will work with the architect, but other than that, I don't really know how that would work, because we don't have a curriculum, we don't have the courses selected yet, so this is, everything has to be decided, is that correct?
Yeah, it's rather than your traditional home economics type course, it's more geared toward, like the equipment would be more of your industry type equipment, your commercial type equipment. So instead of the ovens being your home oven, like you have at home, it's more of a commercial oven that you would see.
But what I'm hearing Lisa say, hospitality, that to me is hotel restaurant management. That's a game changer if you modify that program and open it up to teaching about the entire field. That's what I'm hearing Lisa say.
That wouldn't be, let me go back, if I have it straight, that we would limit it to a few courses. It would be packaged together, and my example was, you learn to bake, but along with baking, it would be how to open a cafe. So those would be combined. So it may not extend to hotels, but it would be limited.
But maybe you can show it could.
We basically have not, this is the fact that we made the decision to go from the traditional home ec to a more hospitality-based program, that's where we're at right now. So the questions you're asking are the same questions that we're asking, but what we're actually going to do is look at some other programs, and our teachers are going to go visit some programs at other schools, because there's a number of schools in New Jersey who have very advanced programs. So, and the teachers have embraced this and are very excited. So they're going to be going with some of the administrators to go and take a look at some other districts. So that way we can have a better answer. And actually, the VOTEC, when we were there, offered, anything we need in terms of coming to look at their program and what they do. But there's a number of comprehensive high schools in New Jersey that offer it as well. So we're in the beginning stages because we want to do it right. But there will likely be a transition period where we may have the room renovated and changed, but there may be a transition to that curriculum where we start, with a few courses and then build on that based on how much, we can get done over the summer in terms of transitioning the courses and the curriculum.
Well, as I understand it, but another driver is the fact that it's very hard to find someone doing the old-fashioned curriculum of home ec. Colleges are not graduating students for that. So it's again moving ahead to the times. One is last century and one is where the course is going.
2 or 3 months ago, when in the operations committee, we looked at the problems with the room and the need to first redo the ventilation and then the major renovation that's planned, hopefully to get bid in the summer, we realized we had to look at whether to go in this direction or the other. And that's part of what brought the decision, the time for the decision to be made now.
I don't think it's been mentioned, but I think this will attract our male students as well as our female students. Historically, home ec was for the girls, and then the boys decided they want to learn how to cook. So my boys learned how to cook, I think, up here. But now, when you start referring to it more industrial, I think you're going to find a different group of youngsters will be attracted to it.
Good.
Great.
No, and just to Mrs. Fechner's point, there are no colleges in New Jersey that offer that certification anymore. And I believe the nearest university that has that is Delaware. So the pool of people to ultimately teach that just isn't there anymore. And by by taking this conversion, we're, as Sandy said, we're updating, modernizing it, and making it more applicable to real-world opportunities that exist today for our students to be able to learn from and take and apply in the real world.
That's great.
I wanted to bring attention to the world language component that you described, and part of my motivation is an experience in the K through 8 district where I was tasked with looking at world language program in K through 8, what other districts were doing, and obviously in the past couple of years we've had issues with how do we handle languages where the number of attendees or those interested has declined, and can we still support it? One of my frustrations had been just looking at what our international competition is. Many people from other countries are bilingual to start with, and that's not something that we've done well in the United States. And when you look back at our K through 8 system, where, for example, in the 6th through 8th grade, our kids are committed to a single language for 3 years, yet they come to the high school, and at best, they're going to be in the 2nd year of that language despite 3 years of teaching. Really not enough education to get them to be bilingual by the time they finish the high school. And I would suggest that Ms. Phelan and our administrators focus on how do we work with the K through 8 to get their program such that we have kids at a more advanced stage when they get to the high school, so that when they finish high school, they can be truly bilingual. That would be the ideal, I think. Any other comments? An incredibly robust discussion on education. Operations, Mr. Fallon? Yes, no, or no?
I was not at that meeting since...
Mr. Collins. Gotcha. Mr. Collins is taking this one.
A very, very brief meeting. About 4 minutes. We basically got together to review, the Operations Committee, as you may or may not remember, several years ago decided that we would, in rotation, look at our professional bids. And this was simply to have an RFP for the district attorney, and then the culinary arts discussion food program that we just went into detail. So we have an RFP out, and certainly notified our current professionals that we're not displeased, but we're keeping our policy in place to keep making sure we're getting the best services at the best rates that we can. And that was really it.
Thanks for keeping on top of it.
A question on the RFP, we say district attorney, what services, you're not talking about, obviously our bond services, we have a bond attorney, negotiation, general?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the bond attorney last year.
No, that's what I'm saying, no,
Yes.
that's why I know it wasn't, this is just the general services.
Correct.
What about special ed attorney?
Same, it's all one.
That's all
We have
one.
one firm.
Yeah, we use,
That's all one.
they do special ed, negotiations, and general.
But generally, it's not the same attorney.
Years ago, we
Same
did have,
The same firm, so you
years ago,
prefer
we had
that
a
has all
different
the
special ed
services.
attorney. You're right.
All the ones that handle public stuff have both.
Yeah,
that's what I wasn't
what Sandy's talking about, years ago, we had a separate
Right.
attorney for special ed, but now that's all one attorney.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we were still going out in that direction with RFP for all those services with one firm. Okay.
It's easier that way to be
Yeah,
honest.
I'm just checking.
Yep.
Any other questions about operations? Communications? Does that fall back in your lap?
Tag team? Or
No, you,
So we really just had, for our benefit, it was our initial meeting, the administration had met prior. This is again looking at revamping our website and all sorts of areas of communication with the public, externally, internally. So we have a follow-up discussion for next week. We've been provided with some websites to look at. So I would say in the next board meeting, we'll have a lot more to report, but the ball is rolling, so to speak. Would you add much more to that?
I just have to do the homework and go at the websites.
Did we get any further in terms of broadcasting meetings I see that that was in the minutes, and I know that there are different formats, and we had briefly talked about, do we do the simple one that matches what we can do easily?
I think that's still a part of this process. I think we have a simple answer, but
I
the
think
more
I believe
complex
we sent it
answer
to,
is...
Brian's working with Warren, because
Yeah.
they're the only ones who have the capability.
That's
of
the
doing
problem too,
remote.
not all of the receiving districts are capable of broadcasting in the
just-
same format.
Yeah.
But we haven't had much success with them yet, so
Well,
we're working on that.
Not going to.
You haven't had much success with who?
With I know he's been working with the Warren. The
Warren cable.
The cable, yeah. I don't know how many have shown yet, because I don't, quite frankly, I don't have it, but I know.
Any have.
Yeah, it's been slow. The progress has been slow, and I don't know why. We'll work on that one.
Maybe we can have that as an agenda item for next week too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, considering that it was an area of interest for the Warren Township and members of the Warren Township Committee, maybe a conversation needs to be had with them to help motivate the process a little bit.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Problem is, every town has a different format that they're able to receive this programming as well. So some towns ultimately may have it sooner than others, and I'd love to get to a point where we have a Chromecast, ability from our website that people can watch it on their TV.
I'd love the ability to send it to any format that's receiving video that people could tune into.
There are devices that will allow you to use our existing camera and broadcast it out to many different social media sites such as Instagram.
I don't think
Facebook.
that's the issue. I think some people are still not utilizing that stuff, right? So they want the old media where it's on a channel at a certain time of day, So that's, yeah.
I don't know, I don't think I know anybody that's not on Instagram or Facebook or Reddit, so.
But they don't need to be mutually exclusive. Obviously,
Right.
different people consume different formats, and we
But
should
the
make it
towns
as
that don't
available.
have their cable channel that are capable.
Absolutely.
Are not gonna do it, they're just not.
Well, it is also on our website, and part of the issue in terms of we're looking at, upgrading our website so that the video, I think one of the complaints was that, it's a little bit hard to get to perhaps and hard to find, so that's, one of the other issues we're solving. So I'm confident that that will be better for the folks who want to.
But part of it is
reviewing
in this
it.
communication committee that we feel we've been tasked with, is to not run willy-nilly in 10 directions. We're trying to really be very focused in our movement and our direction.
Do folks on the board feel, since this was one of our priorities from what we talked about over the past year, that we should expect to see this on the agenda regularly and make sure that this doesn't sort of fall by the wayside? So shall it be done? Thanks. Any other questions for Chris or Bruce? Seeing none, we'll move on to first opportunity for public commentary related to agenda items, and we'll have a second opportunity for any item.
Really quickly, Nick Stevens. As a parent, I want to thank you, Peter, for your service to the board. As a liaison, I'm going to miss you. It's been great to get to know you. And on behalf of the Long Hill Board and District, happy holidays to Watchung District and the families and everybody in the staff.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Appreciate it. This is one of those unique months where we're only having a single meeting for both agenda items and voting, so opportunity to talk about any of the agenda items and ask any questions. Seeing none, and I'm almost afraid to ask for a motion.
I think Chris has taken over quite well at the last meeting, so
I don't know about that, Peter. You
I'm going to
choose.
cede the seat to him.
I'd like to move A1 through A7.
Second. Would anybody like to pull anything for separate discussion or separate vote? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Factor?
Yes.
Mr. Hensinger? Yes. Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Dr. Shapelsky?
Yes.
Motion's
I'd like to
carried.
move A8 through A20.
Second.
Would anybody like to pull anything for separate discussion or separate vote? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mrs. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger? Yes. Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Schibilski?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
I'd like to move C1 through C17.
Second.
Would anybody like to pull anything for separate discussion or separate vote? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mrs. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger? Yes. Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Dr. Schibilski?
Yes.
I'd like to move D1 through D13.
Second.
Would anybody like to pull anything for separate discussion or separate vote? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Peter, you're on D1.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes, except I'll abstain from the portion dealing with reimbursement of expenses.
Mrs. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger? Yes. Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Master Batista?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Schibilski?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
I'd like to move D14 through D19.
Second.
Would anybody like to pull this last group of items for discussion or separate vote? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mrs. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Master Batista?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Dr. Schibilski?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Sines. Second opportunity for public commentary. This can be on any item. Seeing none in the temptation to run for the door. Other business, would anybody like to bring anything up?
Just one item, I know you are anxious to get out of here. I wanted to comment on one of the items from the student representative's report regarding the students that were selected for All Eastern, Veronica Mew and Allison Horvath. Also, Ethan Marmalejos made All Eastern on tuba as first chair in All Eastern. All Eastern is the highest level of recognition you can get as an instrumentalist in the United States. So I wanted to make sure to point out that it's very, very difficult to achieve, and it's exceptional, the students that are able to get there, because they are not just the best in our area, or not just the best in our region, they are the best in the country. And so I think it's really important to highlight the impressive feat that they had there. Related to that, this past weekend was just the Central Jersey region auditions for both vocal, instrumental band, and strings. And for the first time in our school's history, we had 55 students that participated from our music program, which is a tremendous number. I think it shows the strength and growth that the music program has had. And I believe that we had 15 students that actually placed into the various ensembles. So I know it's going to be on their report at our next meeting, but since it just happened this weekend and it was such an important accomplishment, I felt it was worthy pointing out to the rest of the board. So,
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Bob. Anyone else?
And I'll do what I never do and make a motion to adjourn.
Have a great holiday, everyone.
thank you, you too, sir.